Hey everybody, it's Offenbonger. We're here at the Dispo Growth Summit, and I'm really excited on this particular session. We're going to talk about something that every dispensary has. That's a POS system, and yet not every dispensary is effectively using it to help them drive more sales, both in the store, online, and to make business decisions. And to cure that problem, to take care of that for you, we brought in a real expert on the topic. His name is Reid. Chris is head of sales of Cova Software. Chris, today we're going to walk you through ways you can use your POS system, your data for more in-store and online sales for higher average basket sizes. Chris, I'm going to start off. What are some of the best ways you feel that dispensaries can be leveraging these POS systems to help drive more sales?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me, Brian.
Glad
Excited.
you're here to share with us today. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the common trends that we see in dispensaries, it's kind of taking POS and what it has to offer for granted, right? In a place that's so driven by compliance, oftentimes we just think of POS as the thing that keeps you compliant, and that's certainly part of it. But there's a treasure trove of data that's collected by your point of sale, and you can easily leverage that data to help run more efficiently and identify ways where you can optimize performance for better sales. So one of the ways to do that would be to become more familiar with what average sales at your company look like across employees, and dive into employee by employee performance and see if you have any outliers both on the high or the low end. And you've got somebody on the high end, first kind of dig in, make sure it's all on the up and up, and then see what can be leveraged to empower the rest of your team. And if you have someone who's underperforming, connect with them and coach them and understand why. A lot of times it's maybe feeling a bit of insecurity about their product knowledge compared to other employees at the shop. There's always a couple of folks that know just a little bit more, have just a little bit more passion. And that can make somebody who's still learning feel inadequate in conversations with customers. So empowering them to, drive sales despite that is something that can be really meaningful. And another way to really optimize revenue is to look at who's discounting and how much, right? Over discounting is somewhat of an issue in this space. So it can be really useful to dive in there. Finally, and really, I'll qualify this by saying there are endless applications, right? Endless ways that you can use your point of sale to drive sales. But another common one would be to look for products that are moving slower and work to identify whether or not that's because it's a product people don't want, or maybe a product that your staff needs more training on, and training about how to help people become aware of it or help sell it on its merits, right? Topicals would be a good example. When topicals came out, there wasn't a huge demand for them because people didn't necessarily know what the benefits of them were, if they worked, so on and so forth. Now they're a huge category, and part of that is just through driving awareness by bringing these things up to customers when they're there in your shop.
Wow. Roughly how many dispensaries are using your platform now?
Just over 2,000 at this point.
I wanted to bring that out because this guy knows what he's talking about. They're in a lot of different dispensaries, believe me, 2,000. He has a lot of real world knowledge that he's going to share. One tidbit that I want to make sure you all got was this. When you're looking at your sales data, it's great to look at the top performer. Go beyond that, though. Your top performer may be the top performer in your store, but never sells any concentrates. That's an opportunity, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing is you want to make sure that the top performer is the top performer for the right reasons, right? Because one thing that I've seen, especially, I think you run into this more in locations that might commission sales. But sometimes you'll find people who are a little bit on the pushy side. Right. And to an extent, that's good. You want to upsell, right? But what you don't want to do is lose the lifetime value of a customer for the sake of the transaction. And that can happen.
Yes, absolutely. Now, again, you kind of walked us through that door. Let's go through it a little bit. How can my POS system help me better understand customer behaviors?
Yeah, it's a great question, and really varies based on what point of sale you're using.
Okay.
I mean, there are certain data points that most point of sales are going to collect, but whether or not they aggregate that data and present it in a way that's useful for you, that sometimes can be the difference between a point of sale that makes it easy to leverage the data
Sure,
starting
sure.
and one that gives you a little bit more homework, right? But a lot of the point of sales today, and I try not to, I try to be unbiased during these types of conversations.
Right,
Obviously,
right.
I feel like Cove is the best solution on the market, but the
Yeah.
truth is, it's a young industry. There is no one solution that's the right fit for everyone, and I would be doing the industry a disservice to represent things otherwise. That said, a lot of the technology out there will do things like heat mapping for you, so that you can understand when during a day you are the busiest, and that will allow you to optimize your staffing to best service your customers while also running an efficient business where you don't have a lot of wasted man hours. And there are other technologies that can plug into your point of sale to help you harness that data. Like Kaya Push comes to mind. They're really good with HR solutions and helping for that efficiency. Um, but other ways to better understand your customer behavior is look at trends, right? Look at what products are selling best in your location. I think one thing that a lot of operators in this space really have to challenge in themselves is stocking products to their own preference as opposed to the demographics and the personas that are most frequently in their shop.
Amen.
You know, just because I like concentrates doesn't mean that everyone will. And you know
Mhm.
what? If I've got a location that's in a suburban area, the chances of edibles being my driving category are pretty high. And for a lot of cannabis connoisseurs, so to speak, that's not going to be your preference. So
Sure.
use the data to challenge that and know which customers you're serving. You know, dispensary chains that have a location in San Francisco and one across the bay in Oakland probably have the successful ones probably have a pretty different product mix, right? And they're going to stay true to their brand promise. So if they're kind of more boutique and on the high end, they're going to still stock products that fit that criteria, but what that means in each of those locations is going to be different.
Standing. We're talking with Chris Reid. Chris is head of sales of Cova Software. We're talking about how you can leverage your POS systems inside your dispensary for better customer experiences, more sales, a whole lot of different reasons. In just a minute, we're going to get Chris's input as to what certain things I might want to look at if I'm looking at a POS system. Before we go there, POS systems can be really valuable tools for bud tenders to kind of help personalize the shopping experience for that customer they're dealing with. Could you address that a little bit? Because candidly, me, both as a consumer and as someone that's worked in the industry that's been in over 1,000 dispensaries, I feel that our industry has too much of, hi, what can I help you with? Okay, I got that for you. See you later, go. And POS systems can help alleviate that. Why don't we talk a little bit about that, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, people are more likely to spend more money with you and be more content with their purchase if they feel comfortable. And people feel comfortable when they feel known. So when someone's a new customer, it's great to ask those questions. Hey, what brought you in today? How can I help you? But dive deeper too. You know, how familiar are you with cannabis? What's your experience like? Do you have any questions? What can I help explain for you? Um, and make it really accessible, right? I think far too often in this space, you'll walk into a dispensary and it's like, oh, okay, I'm not the cool kid in class, right? Like there's
Yeah,
this air of like, we're a little bit cooler than you are.
right.
And
Yeah.
I get it. It's a fun industry to be in, right? But coach your teams to make people feel welcome. Um, sorry, I lost my train of thought there,
No,
Chris.
where we were going with this, you're bringing out excellent points, and that is how the bud tender interacts with that customer really is going to dictate a lot of what happens. And one of the neat things that I really want to make sure that our audience is aware of is that a sound POS system, I can at a glance get a feel for what their past purchase history is. You
Thank you
know,
very
and
much. Yeah.
when, right? And when I have an idea, if I'm dealing with Chris, let's use Chris and I as an example. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. But if I'm using you as an example, I can take a quick look and I can see, man, the last 8 times Chris has been in this store, he's bought high concentrate flour. All right. So that tells me right off the bat, I probably don't want to show Chris a 100 milligram candy bar. I probably want to show him some concentrates, right? Is that kind of some real basic way as a bud tender I can use that kind of data?
Absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of point of sales will allow you to take it further. So not only can you see past purchases, but you can also take notes. So if you notice trends, take notes and make it even easier on yourself. But the other thing that will frequently happen is cannabis consumers sometimes have porous memory, right? So maybe somebody bought a product they really enjoyed, but then they forgot what it was, right? So help people too. Ask them how they enjoyed their past.
Amen. Yeah. How did
Right?
you like that strain? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then make notes, right? Hey, Travis really loves Death Star. Take that note the next time Travis walks in. If you just got a new drop of Death Star and you say, hey, Travis, I know you like Death Star. We just got a new drop. Travis is probably not going to another dispensary for a while. Travis feels
Absolutely.
at home at that point.
Absolutely. Now, how can POS systems help me with my pricing? You kind of alluded that it'll show me what my sales are by times and I can use it for staffing reasons and things like that. How about pricing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one of the ways that you can leverage your point of sale to price effectively, or even to identify the tiers of products you should carry, is look at the sales rates on products by price, right? Like, are products that are over a certain price just not moving at all?
Okay.
And if so, that's going to give you some insight into maybe your average customer can't afford those products. And you'll probably increase overall sales by not carrying those products anymore because people are going to feel more comfortable with the products in your store. They think everything that's around is an option for them. That's going to empower them as a consumer. So that's one thing. The other thing is with promotions and discounts, right? We all do it in this space, but a lot of times what I see, two things. One is, and this is just a pet peeve, if you consistently discount products the exact same way, that's not a discount, that's your price.
Amen.
Yeah.
Oh, boy, 5 places just immediately went through my mind.
But the other thing is running same promotions even at a regular frequency that don't work. Right. And that's something else I see is, you keep running these promotions and maybe it's because you've got the collateral, you've got the marketing material all ready to go. But if they're not moving product, you're just wasting motion. And the other thing that happens is if you keep doing that, you become stagnant and consumers become apathetic to what you're putting out there. Promotions are driven by nuance and novelty. So you got to mix it up. You got to shift things every now and then.
As someone that's worked with POS systems, how long do you advise me if I run a dispensary? How much time do you recommend me spending with my data, and how frequently should I be taking a look at it?
Ooh, that's a loaded question.
Well,
Uh,
hey,
I
but I mean, I don't want to lead you anywhere. I feel though that people have this tremendous weight on their shoulders that, boy, I'm going to dive into numbers, and oh my God, next thing I know, I'm going to look up and I've got 4 hours of time invested in it. It's not really that way though, is it?
it can be, right? It's like cleaning
Sure.
your house, right? If you
Okay.
do a little bit as you go, you keep cleaning, then you never have all that much to do. Maybe a few
Right.
times a year you do a massive overhaul and clean
Sure.
everything, right? But as long as you keep checking in, then you rarely are faced with that kind of big time suck. And the same would be true with your data and your point of sale. The more frequently the better hygiene you have, first of all, with your data, the easier it is to work with, and the
Right.
better system you work with, the easier it is to work with. So those are two things right there that can save you a lot of time. But past that, the more frequently that you interact with your data, the easier it is to spot outliers or to spot problems, and the less time you're spending with it. If it's like inventory audits, right? If I'm auditing my inventory every month and something's off, it's going to be really hard for me to pinpoint when and where that happened because I've got a month worth to comb through. If I'm doing an inventory audit on a regular basis and something's off, it's a lot easier for me to narrow down on when that happened and to find where that shrinkage occurred. Right.
It's like anything else, a little bit of attention every day and we're probably good, huh?
Yeah, exactly. You brush your teeth every day, you're not getting your mouth drilled for
Right.
hours at a time. Yeah,
That's exactly right, and doing that and can provide just phenomenal returns. It's well worth the time. Let's talk a little bit about how I might be able to use POS systems to help me identify seasonal trends, seasonal data, and forecasting. Is it a good tool to help me forecast what might be going on?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It certainly can be. And I think I'm trying to think of the best way to answer this because there are a number of ways to look at this, right? And one is if you look at products that move in terms of like seasonal trends, and you're looking at products that move around 420 or products that move, around Green Wednesday or around Valentine's Day, a little bit of intuition can go a long way. For example, in advance of Valentine's Day, stock up on some of the novelty THC based lubricants and stuff like that. I mean, no brainer, right? But in terms of areas where I see people go wrong is thinking that because a strain or a product from one manufacturer cultivator moves, that something with the same name from another cultivator or manufacturer is going to move just as well. And there's this naming issue in the space, right? Where things get named the same thing but have very little in common with their counterpart. So you have to apply some scrutiny to it. You can't just look at products that moved one season and go, oh well, this product from this other manufacturer is going to move just as well because I can't get that one I had last year. So instead of that, I would look at the actual characteristics of the products that moved, and look to match based on that as opposed to just names, right? But the other thing that you can do is just look at the categories that are the most successful during those times, right? And again, some of it's going to be intuitive. Oils and concentrates around the beginning of July are going to move better than flour, for the most part, because people are
That's the focus, right?
anticipating 7-10 day. Yeah,
Absolutely. Probably going to sell a little bit more candy bars, edible candy bars around that Valentine's Day than normal. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's talk about dispensaries when they hire a new hire. Okay, they've got a new employee. Turnover is an issue in the industry. They've got a new employee. What kinds of things should they be showing them about the POS system? And what kind of attention should they devote to it?
It's a good question. And I think it does depend on who you're working with for point of sale, and I'll shamelessly plug myself here, right? Yakova right here. But we have an LMS, right? So we have a learning management system. There are courses that you can put your employees in front of, where we're going to help you with that training. Okay. So that's often a benefit for some of our customers and something that makes it a little bit easier for them to onboard their own employees. But after that, I would think to myself, what does this employee need to operate in their role? And I would start there. And the reason that I wouldn't go beyond that is that a lot of times these are employees who have not worked in a dispensary before. And the compliance and the fact that we're dealing in a Schedule I narcotic, hopefully, maybe that'll be changing, depends on what side of the that equation you're on. But the reality is that there will be some fear in your employees' minds anyway. They're going to do something wrong, they're going to put you out of compliance, right? And that's if you're doing your job, because they should have knowledge of the fact that, hey, this is serious, right? I mean, when it comes to compliance, your front line or your first line of defense is very often your most inexperienced employees, right? You get the people scanning.
Absolutely.
So that's where I would focus on the fundamentals, right? Don't go above and beyond. Work with a point of sale where you can set permissions for your employees so that they're not really even being exposed to things that they shouldn't be until they have a little bit more knowledge. And then ask your point of sale provider as well. And if they don't have a good answer for you, then you might want to look for a different one.
The reality, though, is we want to make sure that we're addressing the POS systems and onboarding because it's a real critical function. Talk to me a
It is.
little bit.
Well, and your point of sale should be easy to use and easy to learn, right? And
Amen.
that's not universally true in this space, but it should
No.
be because of the amount of turnover and the fact that it is so serious. Mistakes can lead to loss of license. So you want it to be really easy to avoid that.
Let's talk about that. You mentioned ease of use as a factor that I want to look at if I'm evaluating a system. What are some of the other things that I want to be looking at if I'm evaluating a new POS system?
Well, I mean, I would start with what's the workflow of your operation? Do you want to have a concierge model, the floating bud tender model, if you
Huh?
will, somebody walking around with your
Like
customers,
that.
helping them, right? If that's the case, then you want a point of sale that where tablets are supported, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to be lugging a laptop around. Uh,
Yep.
but beyond that, there are a number of things to consider. One, how solid is your internet connection, right? If you have spotty internet where you are, then you need to work with a point of sale that has offline mode. Every
Okay.
state that's operating right now, carry the one, I think, has a state traceability system that's actively being used. So if you don't have an offline mode on your point of sale, you're either dead in the water or you're writing down manually 24 character metric tags, or you're writing down your biotrack tags, and you're depending on legibility. You're depending on numbers
Sure.
not getting smeared by someone's hand. You're
Yeah.
depending on a lot. And you're depending on your ability to not miss any lines when you go add that information manually later on. Whereas if you're working with a point of sale that has offline mode and you lose the internet connection, your transactions are going to store locally to the device you're on. And then when that connection is restored, they're all going to sync back up and keep you compliant.
I want to look at how am I selling? As you mentioned, if I'm selling from the floor, tablet mode's important.
Yeah.
Offline mode's important. What
Yeah.
are a couple other things I want to make sure I'm good with?
I mean, I would look at track record, right? I would look at reliability, dependability. Outages, I think sometimes get downplayed, right? We'll say, hey, it
Yeah.
was only a 20-minute outage. It was only a 30-minute outage. Okay. Well, it's not just about how many transactions you lose during that gap. It's the lifetime value of every customer that came to your dispensary, couldn't make a purchase, and had to go somewhere else because
Mhm.
they don't have that trust anymore. You've broken
Yeah.
the trust that they're going to be able to purchase product from you when they come in. Now, maybe they've had a wonderful decade of experience with you and they're going to continue shopping with you because it's an outlier and they know that. But do you want to count on that? Right. The average cannabis customer across the nation, loyalty of about 2 years. They shop between 1 and 2 times a month. They're spending anywhere, it just depends on the market, right? Anywhere between $50 and $150 per shop. That's a lot more valuable than just that 20 to 30 minutes worth of sales.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if anyone's ever been through that, they'll know exactly what Chris just shared with them, without a doubt. Um, Common mistakes you see with people making with their POS systems. How would you address that?
Um, there's no substitute for knowing your business, right? We can rely on technology to an extent, but intuition matters. Spending time in your dispensaries matter. And if you're not going to do that yourself, having a point person on your team or a general manager, somebody who is, that matters. And that whoever is doing that, if you have multiple locations, should spend time in each of your locations so that there's consistency. Right. But I think often we look at technology as, hey, this is going to provide me with everything I need. So I don't need to go in. Right. I would challenge that. I would
Right.
challenge that. There's no substitute for knowing your own business, right? You can bring on consultants, you can bring on attorneys, you can bring on cannabis specific accountants, and I think everyone should. All of those things matter and they make a difference. At the end of the day, it's not their business, it's yours. So spend some time there and get beyond the numbers as well. Spend time with your employees, know what motivates them, know who they are as people, know where their strengths and their weaknesses are. Not all of that's going to show up on a metric. But if you have employees that don't feel valued, then they're going to leave. And you're going to have to hire a replacement and you're going to have to train that replacement. You're going to incur more cost by losing that employee than you would by keeping it. Right. So interpersonal familiarity with your operation, spending time with your feet on the ground, like there is no substitute for that.
Let's talk about, I'm a new dispensary operator getting ready to open, getting all my ducks in a row and all that type of thing. Or also I'm a dispensary operator and I'm looking at upgrading my POS system, moving beyond what I have right now. Are there things, one, I gave you two different scenarios. Is there a difference in how I want to approach implementation under either? If I'm new versus something I have, and then two, what implementation pointers can you share with us?
Well, I think it can be different. It really depends on what your scale, your plans are to scale and how aggressive you want to look at that. If you're a new operator and you don't have plans to add other locations, then there are probably more solutions available that will fit your needs. If you are planning on having more than one location, then you really want to make sure that you're dealing with a platform that supports that kind of scalability and that you're getting economies of scale for adding locations, right? If you have 10 locations with the provider, you probably don't want to be paying the same thing that you would be as when you had one location with them.
Sure.
But the reality is not all of the systems in this space are built in such a manner that they can accommodate that. Right. So if they have, if they're working with a single tenant server model, then their ability to reduce their cost through your scaling efforts is not as significant. So they're not going to be able to extend as many savings to you. Right. At the same point in time, if you're a small new location, then things that matter to, you know, a 10 location operation that has some dispensaries in really highly trafficked areas, they're going to have more needs than you do. So maybe you can save a little bit of money on your monthly cost by going with somebody that doesn't have quite as many bells and whistles. If you are looking if you are going to scale your business, then you really want to work with a company that's built to not only accommodate that, but enable it. Right. So what I mean there is if you have multiple locations, right, accommodating that would be saying, okay, well, we'll give you those economies of scale. We'll discount your monthly service so that you can have more locations, and we'll consider that and lower your price point a little bit. Working with somebody who truly enables you to be successful as a multi-location is going a little bit further, right? Can you see what inventory is available at other locations from the front end of the platform, so that if you have somebody who is, you know, product loyal in your shop, who really wants Headbanger Boogie by Takao and you're out, can you look on that device and see that you have it across town? And then call across town and say, hey, can you set that aside? Chris is going to be over there in 15 minutes. Turn around. Hey, Chris, they're going to have it waiting for you when you get over there. Is there anything else I should tell them to pull?
Yeah, there you go.
Right. And the same thing on the back end, right? Can you log in from one point and access data on all of your operations from the back end? Do you have to be on site? Right. There are some services or some providers where you have to be on site in order to access your back end. That's not very feasible for somebody who has a lot of locations, or somebody who wants to be able to, you know, travel and access their data while they're on the road.
There you go. When somebody asks you, Chris, why should I invest in Cova software versus other alternatives I have? What's your answer? Why? What makes your platform something that I should have in my dispensary?
Well, first of all, I hope I don't get beat up for this, but I would, if somebody just came at me with that question out of the blue, I would say I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if we're the best provider for you because I haven't connected with you. I don't know what your operation is. I don't know what your needs are. And I think far too often in this space, we forget that there's enough food for everyone to eat. And somebody comes up to us and says, who's the best point of sale? And we go, I am. There's no reason you should use anybody else. You don't know that. Talk to them. Get to know them. If I had to talk about why Cova stands out, I would look at consistent leadership. I would look at the fact that our platform was purpose-built for the cannabis space, that our CEO, Gary Cohen, went out and met with operators before we built Cova and asked them, what keeps you up at night? I would look at the fact that our parent company is a company called IQ Metrics, and they've been supporting the cellular space for over 2 decades, have 80% market share in that space, work with Verizon, T-Mobile, Cricket, right? You know, 420 is a really big day. it's not as big as an iPhone 15 drop across thousands of retails.
Yeah.
So, looking at that, that's where I feel like Cobra really stands out in our support and onboarding. We have a really intense and involved onboarding process where we help get everything configured, we help train people, and then the same people who help you get set up are your primary point of contact for the next 6 weeks. So that as you iterate, because there's always how we think things are going to go and how they actually go. So as you iterate and you make changes to your configuration, as you get up and running, you're not having to start over with every person you talk to and say, well, here's why that's configured this way. And this is why we have that set up like we do. They know because they helped you do it.
Mhm.
And then after those 6 weeks, it's an average of 20 to 60 seconds if you call in before you're talking to a live person sitting in North America with over an 80% one call resolution, right? So customer service is fantastic,
Mhm.
onboarding fantastic, reliability fantastic, easy to use. And we're driven by providing a better experience for our customers as opposed to a return to our investors and then reverse engineering a value prop to our customers.
Before I conclude and ask a couple more questions, I want to editorialize. And not only have I have experience with POS systems in a dispensary environment, but Chris's industry, like any other, has a trade association. And that trade association is called the Retail Solution Providers Association, of which I had the great fortune to speak at a variety of their different events and work with a lot of their different members. And I hope that anyone that's watching this understands that Chris and his company takes an approach of understanding what you're doing and then trying to make sure their solution is right for you. I hope you really picked up on that. They're not, he gave you a beautiful answer of why Cova Software versus someone else. And he said he's not really sure. He needs to ask you questions why. That was the answer you want to hear. That's the kind of company you want to spend a little bit of time with when you're looking at POS solutions, because that's how you're ultimately going to get the best. With me off my soapbox now, let me move on to what's the best way for people to stay in touch with both you and Cova?
Great question. I'm always happy to connect on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I get a little bit backed up sometimes. So you can always shoot me an email as well. My email is Chris, CHRISR, at covasoftware.com. Covasoftware.com, our website has a litany of resources, really just a ton of material on there, most of it available for download. And anything that's not, you can always reach out to me and I'm sure we can get it to you.
Okay.
And we also, if you're in a new market, a market that recently legalized, the chances that we're coming through and doing some free seminars are very high. So I just got back from Minnesota where we were doing seminars in Minneapolis and Duluth.
Yes,
They're
you did.
day-long seminars. We talk to people about how to get up and running, what to consider when you're evaluating your tech, and you're looking at solutions to bring into your operation. So there are a number of ways, but we're always happy to connect. Last time I was on a podcast, I gave out my phone number and they said not to do that. So
Okay, that's all right.
my company didn't, the podcaster did. So if you're okay with it, I'm happy to give out my number as well.
Well, you know what we'll do is this. We'll put in the comments section how you can reach Chris, his email, a phone number in which you can get a hold of him. Although he's based in Colorado, they work across the country with dispensaries in every operating state. And as you see,
I'm gonna jump in there. I'm really sorry, Brian, to cut you off, but I'm gonna jump in there real quick because I always want to set the right expectations. We're not in every operating state in the
I'm
US.
sorry. Okay.
And I do think that that's another thing that differentiates us, honestly,
Okay.
because we only go into states once we have devoted the resources not only to get compliant in that state, but to support continued compliance in that state, because there are always iterations and changes. And never want to be the company who says, oh yeah, sure, we're in that state, and then tries to figure it out. The markets that we support are listed on our site. We also service, I would say right now, a little over 50% of the Canadian market. So if you are north of the border, you have an operation north of the border, we can support that as well.
And obviously with over 2,000 units in deployment, that's quite an impressive track record. Chris, thanks for sharing your expertise. Lots of valuable things and valuable information that you can use with your POS system. It's one of the things in working with dispensaries that I feel is a really underutilized tool. Spend a little bit of time with it every single day. Take a look at the data that you get from it. Make sure your bud tenders not only are comfortable with using it, but also understand how they can use that to get an idea of what people have been buying and make recommendations from there. You can reach Chris and his company. This is coming out 2 weeks before MJ BizCon. The Cova crew, COVA, Cova Software, they'll be at MJ BizCon as well. Reach out to Chris, set something up. I'm sure he and his team would be happy to speak with you. Chris, thanks for your time. I urge you, watch the other 7 presentations. We have gotten some absolutely dynamite information from our presenters that drive bottom line results from you. It's been absolutely amazing. I've been enjoying the experience. I've learned a ton. I know you will too. So watch the other 7 episodes. Feel free to send us a comment. Chris, again, thank you, sir.
Cheers. Thanks, Brian.